Good evening. Welcome to the shadows where the truth hides. I am your narrator, your guide through the darkest corridors of American history. We are embarking on a journey into the sterile, terrifying world of medical crimes and unseen poisons. This is a realm where the healers become the hunters and the medicine cabinet becomes an arsenal. Tonight, we do not start with a face you can hate. We start with a phantom. We begin in a time when trust was absolute and safety was taken for granted, right before it was shattered forever. The year is 1982. The location is Chicago, Illinois. It is late September, and the air is turning crisp, carrying the bite of the coming winter off Lake Michigan. In the suburbs and the city streets, life is moving at a steady, rhythmic pace. It is a time before tamper-proof seals, a time when you could walk into a drugstore, unscrew a cap, and trust that what was inside would cure you, not kill you. But in the quiet corners of Cook County, someone is tampering with that trust. Someone is playing God with random lives, turning a common household necessity into a game of Russian roulette. On the morning of September 29th, 12-year-old Mary Kellerman wakes up in her home in Elk Grove Village. She is a bright, vibrant child, but today she feels the heavy fog of a head cold. Her throat is scratchy, her nose running. It is a mundane, ordinary sickness. She goes to her parents, seeking relief. They do what any parent would do. They give her a capsule of extra-strength Tylenol. It is the leading painkiller in the country, a brand synonymous with comfort. Mary takes the pill, drinks some water, and goes to the bathroom to get ready for school. She never makes it out of that room. Minutes later, her father hears the sound of something falling. He finds his daughter collapsed on the floor, barely breathing. The panic is immediate, a cold spike of adrenaline. The paramedics arrive, but nothing makes sense. A healthy young girl, dying in front of their eyes. They rush her to the hospital, but it is too late. Mary Kellerman is pronounced dead. The doctors are baffled. They suspect a stroke, maybe a sudden aneurysm. No one suspects the small red and white capsule dissolving in her stomach, unleashing a lethal dose of potassium cyanide. While the Kellerman family is plunged into a nightmare of grief, the horror is only just beginning. A few miles away in Arlington Heights, 27-year-old postal worker Adam Janus buys a bottle of Tylenol for a minor chest pain. He takes the pills in his kitchen. Within an hour he is collapsing, his body convulsing as his cells are starved of oxygen. He is rushed to the hospital and dies shortly after. The tragedy brings his family together. They gather at his home to mourn, distraught, and seeking comfort. In a cruel twist of fate, Adam's brother, Stanley, and Stanley's wife, Teresa, both develop headaches from the stress of the day. They reach for the same bottle of Tylenol that Adam had used, sitting innocently on the counter. They have no idea they are reaching into a loaded weapon. Stanley and Teresa take the pills. Within minutes, the funeral gathering turns into a scene of absolute chaos. Stanley collapses. Teresa follows. The paramedics who had just left the hospital after dropping off Adam are called back to the same house. By the end of the day, 3 members of the Janus family are dead. The coincidence is too impossible to ignore. A nurse named Helen Jensen is the first to voice the impossible thought. She suggests it might be the Tylenol. The police and the medical examiners are skeptical at first. How could a painkiller kill? But Helen Jensen is persistent. She counts the pills in the bottle found at the Janus home. She notices a strange, almond-like odor. It is the signature scent of cyanide, a poison so potent that a grain the size of a rice kernel can kill an adult. The toxicology reports come back. and the impossible is confirmed. The capsules are not filled with medicine. They are packed with enough poison to kill thousands. The connection to Mary Kellerman is made, and suddenly, Chicago is a city under siege. Panic spreads through the streets faster than the poison itself. Police cars drive through neighborhoods with loudspeakers, blaring warnings to throw away any Tylenol bottles. It is a scene out of a wartime movie, but this is the American suburbs. Hospitals are flooded with terrified citizens, clutching their stomachs, convinced they have been poisoned. The manufacturer, Johnson & Johnson, makes an unprecedented decision. They do not try to hide. They issue a nationwide recall, pulling 31 million bottles off the shelves. It costs them $100 million, but it saves the brand, and more importantly, it stops the dying. But the question remains, hanging like a dark cloud over the city. Who? Who would do this? This is not a crime of passion. It is not a crime of profit. It is an act of pure, impersonal terror. The killer did not know Mary Kellerman or the Janus family. They simply went into stores, bought the bottles, took them home, laced them with death, and placed them back on the shelves for unsuspecting strangers to buy. It is the definition of a new kind of evil, one that strikes without motive and without warning. The police form a task force, desperate for a lead. The investigation produces thousands of leads, but few concrete answers. One name floats to the surface, James William Lewis. He sends a letter to Johnson & Johnson demanding $1 million to stop the killings. The FBI descends on him. Lewis is a conman, intelligent and manipulative. He admits to writing the letter but denies the murders. He tells the investigators he just wanted to take advantage of the situation. He is convicted of extortion and spends years in prison, but he is never charged with the killings. The physical evidence never links him to the bottles in Chicago. Other suspects drift in and out of the spotlight. There is a dock worker who acted strangely. There is a neighbor with a chemistry set, but every lead turns into a dead end. The DNA technology of 1982 is not advanced enough to pull traces from the bottles. The surveillance cameras that watch our every move today do not exist. The Tylenol killer is a ghost. He or she slipped into the aisles, planted the seeds of death, and walked away into the anonymity of the crowd, leaving 7 people dead and a nation forever changed. The legacy of the Tylenol murders is something you hold in your hand every time you buy a bottle of water or a jar of vitamins. That foil seal, that plastic ring, that shrink wrap on the cap. Those are the monuments to the victims. They are the physical scars of a society that lost its innocence in the autumn of 1982. We learned that we could not trust the things we bought. We learned to check the seals. We learned that a monster could be anyone, standing next to us in the checkout line. But while the Tylenol case was an attack from the outside, a random strike of terror, there is a darker, more intimate form of betrayal. What happens when the poison doesn't come from a stranger in a store? What happens when the danger is sitting across from you at the dinner table, smiling, passing you a glass of tea? We leave the windy streets of Chicago now. We travel south to the humid heat of Alabama. Here, the poison isn't random. It is personal. It is slow. And it is being administered by someone who claims to love you. We leave the cold, concrete grid of Chicago and descend into the humid, verdant embrace of the Deep South. Welcome to Anniston, Alabama. The year is 1975. Here, the air is thick enough to wear, heavy with the scent of magnolia and the drone of cicadas. It is a place where neighbors know each other's names, where Sunday church is mandatory and where secrets are buried deep beneath the manicured lawns. In this town, appearance is everything, and no one maintains a better appearance than Audrey Marie Hilley. To the outside world, she is the perfect Southern belle. She is impeccably dressed, charming, and dotes on her husband, Frank, and their 2 children. Frank Hilley is a man who works himself to the bone. He is a laborer, a provider, a man who trusts his wife implicitly. He comes home every evening to a hot meal and a loving smile. But in the spring of 1975, Frank begins to fade. It starts with a nagging nausea, a stomachache that refuses to settle. He chalks it up to a virus, or perhaps the stress of work. But the sickness does not pass. It digs in. His skin takes on a sickly pallor. He grows weak, his strong hands trembling as he tries to hold his morning coffee. The doctors are puzzled. They diagnose him with a liver malfunction, then infectious hepatitis. They treat the symptoms, but they cannot stop the decay. Frank dies in May. The official cause is natural causes. The community rallies around Marie. She is the grieving widow, a tragic figure in black, weeping softly at the funeral. She cashes the life insurance check, a sum of roughly $31,000. It is a small fortune in 1975. Marie buys a new car, new clothes, and continues to play the role of the devoted mother. The town of Anniston moves on, unaware that a predator is living in their midst. The monster is not hiding in the shadows. She is hosting garden parties. 3 years pass. The money from Frank's death begins to run dry. Marie needs a new source of income, or perhaps she just needs to feel that rush of power again. She turns her gaze to her own flesh and blood. Her daughter, Carol, is 20 years old, full of life and potential. But then, the pattern repeats. Carol begins to feel the same nausea that killed her father. It starts slowly, a creeping malaise. Marie is always there, hovering by the bedside, offering soup, offering injections for the nausea. She tells the doctors she is a nurse, a lie she tells with practiced ease. Carol's condition deteriorates rapidly. But unlike her father, her symptoms evolve into something more specific, something terrifying. She loses the feeling in her hands and feet. Her wrists go limp. She cannot walk. This is a condition known as foot drop, a classic, telltale sign of heavy metal poisoning that the local doctors miss because they cannot conceive of a mother doing this to her child. Carol is wasting away, her body shutting down, while her mother sits by her side, stroking her hair and feeding her more poison. But fate intervenes in the form of a suspicious doctor. Carol is transferred to a hospital in Birmingham. There, a physician notices something strange on Carol's fingernails. They are white, transverse lines running across the nail bed. They are called Mises lines. To a trained eye, they scream one thing: arsenic. The doctor orders a heavy metal toxicology screen. The results are shocking. Carol's hair contains arsenic levels 50 times higher than normal. She is not sick. She is being murdered. The police arrest Marie Hilley. The revelation shatters the community. The sweet, charming widow is a cold-blooded killer. They exhume Frank's body from the red Alabama clay. The autopsy reveals the truth that had been buried for years. Frank's body is saturated with arsenic. He was preserved, pickled in poison by the woman he loved. Marie is charged with murder and attempted murder. But the story of Audrey Marie Hilley does not end in a cell. Not yet. She is a chameleon, a master manipulator who believes she is smarter than the law. While out on bail, Marie Hilly vanishes. She leaves behind a note suggesting she has been kidnapped. It is a ruse. She flees to Florida, shedding her identity like a snake shedding its skin. She becomes Robbie Hannon. She meets a man named John Homan, charms him, and marries him. She builds an entirely new life, a new history. She spins a web of lies so complex it is dizzying. She invents a twin sister named Terry. She fakes her own death as Robbie, only to return as Terry to comfort her grieving brother-in-law. It is a psychological game of chess, played with human lives. For 3 years, she evades the FBI. She lives a double, triple life, fueled by deception. But the lies eventually collapse under their own weight. Her frantic, erratic behavior draws attention. She is caught, identified, and brought back to Alabama to face judgment. She is sentenced to life in prison, but even behind bars, she remains a creature of impulse and escape. In 1987, she is granted a furlough, a temporary leave from prison. She seizes the opportunity. She runs again. This time, there is no Florida sunshine. There is no new husband. There is only the cold, hard reality of being hunted. 4 days after she escapes, she is found on the porch of a house in rural Alabama. It is raining, and the temperature is near freezing. She is hypothermic, confused, and dying. The woman who used chemicals to burn the life out of her family has been consumed by the elements. Audrey Marie Hilly dies before she can reach the hospital. The Black Widow of Alabama is gone, leaving behind a legacy of absolute betrayal. Her story forces us to confront a terrifying psychological truth. The person who cooks your meals, who tends to your wounds, who kisses you goodnight, could be harboring a darkness you cannot see. She killed for money, yes, but mostly she killed for control. She wanted to be the center of the tragedy, the nurse, the savior, and the executioner all at once. We move now from the domestic nightmare of the Hilly home to a different kind of horror. We leave the amateur poisoner behind and enter the domain of the professional. We go to a place where we are most vulnerable, where we sign away our consciousness and lay our bodies on a table, trusting that the person holding the scalpel is there to heal. But in Texas, there is a surgeon who is not healing. He is maiming. He is not a doctor. He is a butcher. The system that is supposed to protect patients is about to fail in the most catastrophic way imaginable. We travel now to the Lone Star State. Welcome to Dallas, Texas. It is the land of big oil, big money, and even bigger egos. In the early years of the new millennium, Dallas is also a booming hub of medical innovation. The skyline is punctuated by gleaming glass towers, hospitals that look more like five-star hotels. Here, neurosurgery is the pinnacle of the medical hierarchy. The surgeons are treated like gods, walking the corridors in white coats that command instant respect. They hold the power of life and death in their hands, repairing the delicate wiring of the human spine and brain. Into this world walks Christopher Dunch. He arrives with a resume that sparkles. He has a pedigree from a top program in Tennessee. He is charismatic, articulate, and brims with an infectious confidence. He tells anyone who will listen that he is the best, that he is building an empire. He promises to cure back pain, to fix necks, to restore mobility. Patients flock to him, desperate for relief. They see the diploma on the wall, the confident smile, and they trust him. They do not know that beneath the polished veneer lies a terrifying incompetence, a darkness that defies the Hippocratic oath. Christopher Dunch is not a healer. He is a destroyer. The horror begins to unfold in the operating room. Surgery is an art of precision. It requires the delicate touch of a pianist. But witnesses describe Dunch's technique as something else entirely. He is rough. He is impatient. He struggles with basic anatomy. In one early surgery, he operates on his own best friend, Jerry Summers. Jerry trusts Chris with his life. He goes in for a routine neck procedure. He wakes up unable to move his arms or legs. Dunch has damaged the spinal cord, turning his friend into a quadriplegic. As Jerry lies in the ICU, screaming in confusion and pain, Dunch is nowhere to be found. He is off to the next surgery, the next victim. The pattern that emerges is not just negligence, it is carnage. A school teacher named Kelly Martin comes to him for a simple disc removal. It is a surgery that should take 45 minutes. But during the procedure, Dunch slashes through a major artery. The room fills with blood. The anesthesiologist panics, watching the vital signs crash. Dunch keeps working, seemingly oblivious to the catastrophe he has caused. Kelly Martin bleeds to death on the table. She leaves behind a husband and children who cannot understand how a routine back surgery turned into a funeral. You would think this would be the end. You would think the hospital would strip him of his license, that the police would be called. But the American medical system has a fatal flaw. It protects the institution, not the patient. The hospital, terrified of a lawsuit, allows Dunch to resign quietly. They give him a letter stating he has no adverse history. He takes this letter and drives down the road to the next hospital. He is washed clean, free to kill again. It is a game of musical chairs, played with human lives. He lands at Dallas Medical Center, and the nightmare repeats within days. Floella Brown is next. She is a grandmother, looking forward to retirement. Dunch slices into her vertebral artery. She suffers a massive stroke and dies. While she is dying in one room, Dunch is already scrubbing in for the next patient, Mary Efford. The carnage he inflicts on Mary is so severe, it baffles the mind. He amputates a nerve root. He screws hardware not into her spine, but into the muscle of her back. He leaves surgical sponges inside her body. When another surgeon, Dr. Robert Henderson, opens her up later to fix the damage, he is horrified. He thinks he is looking at the work of an imposter or a madman. Dr. Henderson and another veteran surgeon, Dr. Randall Kirby, realize that this must stop. They do something rare in the medical world. They break the code of silence. They go to the medical board. They go to the district attorney. They look at the scans of Dunch's victims, and they see intention. They argue that this level of failure is impossible for a trained surgeon. This is not an accident. This is assault. They uncover an email Dunch sent to an employee, a window into his twisted soul. He writes about becoming a cold-blooded killer. He writes about transcending the limits of morality. The realization hits the investigators like a physical blow. Christopher Dunch is not just a bad doctor. He is a sociopath using the operating theater as his torture chamber. The scalpel is his weapon, and the anesthesia renders his victims helpless. The Dallas County District Attorney takes a historic step. They charge a doctor with a crime usually reserved for gang members and murderers. They charge him with assault with a deadly weapon. The deadly weapons are his hands and his surgical tools. The trial is a spectacle. The jury hears from the victims who survived, rolling into the courtroom in wheelchairs, speaking through voice boxes. They see the anatomy diagrams showing screws lodged in nerves and arteries. They hear the testimony of Dr. Henderson, who says it looked like Dunch had thrown the hardware into the patient's back. The defense tries to argue that he was just poorly trained, a victim of a bad education system. But the jury sees the truth. They see the malice. They find Christopher Dunch guilty. He is sentenced to life in prison. For the first time in American history, a doctor is put behind bars for life for his actions in the operating room. Dr. Death is stopped, but the scars remain. 33 patients maimed, 2 dead, countless families destroyed, and the lingering question: how many people saw him fail and said nothing? How many administrators signed the paperwork to pass him along? The system failed because it was designed to protect profits and reputations, not people. Christopher Dunch was a loud, brash monster. He operated in the spotlight, leaving a trail of blood that was impossible to miss. But there is another kind of medical killer, one who is quieter, one who does not maim with a scalpel, but kills with a whisper. He does not stay in one city. He moves across the world, a phantom drifting from hospital to hospital, crossing borders and oceans. He is intelligent, charming, and addicted to the moment the light leaves a patient's eyes. We pack our bags now. We are leaving Texas. We are going on a global manhunt for a man named Michael Swango. We leave the scorched plains of Texas and the brutal, bloody incompetence of Christopher Dunch. We move now to a different kind of monster. This man is not incompetent. He is brilliant. He is not a butcher who hacks and slashes. He is a chemist who kills with a whisper. He is a handsome, all-American hero who charmed his way into the hearts of women and the halls of prestigious hospitals, all while carrying a doctor's bag filled with arsenic and cyanide. His name is Michael Swango, and his hunting ground was the entire planet. Meet Michael Swango in the early 1980s. He is the golden boy. He is a former Marine, standing tall with a military bearing, blonde hair, and a smile that disarms everyone he meets. He enters medical school at Ohio State University, and he looks like the picture of success. But beneath the polished surface, there is a rot. His classmates notice that he has a morbid fascination with the macabre. He keeps scrapbooks filled with pictures of gruesome car accidents. He talks about the smell of burning flesh with a strange fondness. The students at Ohio State give him a nickname, Double O Swango. It is a dark joke, a reference to James Bond's License to Kill. But the joke stops being funny when the students start getting sick. When Swango brings fried chicken to a study group, everyone ends up violently ill. When he offers a classmate a soda, she suffers from seizures and partial paralysis. The professors are worried. They see a student who is cheating, lying, and possibly dangerous. But the university is an institution that protects its own reputation. They almost expel him, but he fights back. He survives. He graduates. Armed with a medical degree, Swango moves to Quincy, Illinois, to work as an ambulance paramedic while waiting for a residency. The horror follows him like a shadow. His co-workers at the ambulance station begin to suffer from sudden, debilitating cramps, dizziness, and nausea. It happens every time Swango brings in a box of donuts or makes a pot of coffee. The paramedics, trained to notice patterns, set a trap. They test the donuts. The lab results are chilling. The food is laced with arsenic, a rat poison that eats the body from the inside out. Michael Swango is arrested. The golden boy is now a felon. He is convicted of aggravated battery for poisoning his colleagues. He is sentenced to 5 years in prison. You would think this is the end of the story. A convicted poisoner can never practice medicine again. The system should be foolproof. But Michael Swango knows that the system is broken. He serves 2 years and is released. He does not stop. He simply reinvents himself. He becomes a master forger, a chameleon who changes his history with a typewriter and a bottle of correction fluid. He changes his name. He forges documents from the prison, claiming he was incarcerated for a minor fistfight, not for poisoning. He applies to residency programs in South Dakota and New York. And the terrifying reality is that the hospitals do not check. They see the handsome face, the military service, the charm. They hire him. He is back in the white coat. He is alone in rooms with vulnerable patients, armed with syringes and a knowledge of chemistry that kills without leaving a trace. Patients begin to die unexpectedly, their hearts stopping for no reason. But the most tragic victim of his deception is a woman named Kristen Kinney. She is a beautiful, vibrant nurse who falls deeply in love with Swango. She sees the wounded hero, the man misunderstood by the world. They plan to marry. But then, Kristen gets sick. She suffers from confusion and severe stomach pain. She trusts Michael implicitly. She lets him treat her. But as her health fails, the darkness closes in. She eventually dies from a gunshot wound to the chest. It is ruled a suicide, but later tests reveal her body is full of poison. He broke her body, and then he broke her mind. The walls begin to close in on him in America. The FBI is sniffing around. The past is catching up. So Swango does what a predator does when the hunting grounds run dry. He migrates. He flees to Zimbabwe. He gets a job at a remote mission hospital. The staff there is desperate for a doctor. They welcome him with open arms. They do not know they have invited the devil to dinner. Within weeks, patients who are recovering start dying. A simple surgery turns into a funeral. The nurses in Zimbabwe see what the Americans missed. They see him injecting patients right before they die. He is eventually caught with a stash of poisons in his cottage in Africa. He is fired, but he slips away again before he can be prosecuted. He travels to Europe, then plans a move to Saudi Arabia to work in a royal hospital. He believes he is untouchable, a global nomad of death. But he makes one fatal mistake. His flight to Saudi Arabia has a layover, a brief stop on American soil. He has to pass through Chicago O'Hare International Airport. He thinks he is just a passenger in transit. He does not know that the federal agents are waiting. Michael Swango is arrested on the tarmac. The contents of his bag tell the whole story. He is not carrying medical journals. He is carrying formulas for silent killers. He eventually pleads guilty to avoid the death penalty and is locked away forever in a supermax prison. He is the ultimate survivalist who turned life into a game of death. He proved that a white coat is the perfect disguise. If you look the part, if you speak the language, the world will let you get away with murder. He killed roughly 60 people, and he did it while the world watched. Swango was a nomad, a flashy, handsome killer who ran when the heat got too high. But our next subject is different. He is not handsome. He is not charming. He is a ghost who blends into the beige walls of the hospital. He does not run. He stays. He works the night shift, the graveyard shift, for 16 years. He drifts through the corridors of New Jersey and Pennsylvania like a vapor. He is the most prolific serial killer in the history of the American healthcare system. And for over a decade, the hospitals knew, and they did nothing. We leave the exotic, globe-trotting madness of Michael Swango and return to the grey industrial heart of the American Northeast. We are in New Jersey. The year is 1988. It is a place of highways, smokestacks, and sprawling suburban hospitals that hum with activity 24 hours a day. In the chaos of a busy hospital, there are spaces where the light is dim and the noise fades to the rhythmic beeping of monitors. This is the domain of the night shift. And this is where we find Charles Cullen. He is not a golden boy. He is a ghost. Charles Cullen is a man who seems to have been born in the shadows. He is thin, pale, and speaks in a voice so soft you have to lean in to hear him. He is the kind of person you look at and immediately forget. He walks with his shoulders hunched, carrying the weight of a miserable childhood and a history of suicide attempts. He is a registered nurse, a caretaker, a man sworn to alleviate suffering. But inside the mind of this quiet, unassuming man, the wires are crossed. He does not see death as an enemy to be fought. He sees it as a gift to be given. His weapon of choice is not a gun or a knife. It is a medication called digoxin. In the right hands, digoxin is a miracle drug. It regulates the heart rate, helping a struggling heart beat with a strong, steady rhythm. But in the wrong hands, it is a silent assassin. An overdose does not cause a violent seizure. It does not cause bleeding. It simply slows the heart down. It slows it and slows it until the rhythm becomes chaotic, and then, finally, it stops. It looks exactly like natural heart failure. It is the perfect crime for a man who wants to remain invisible. Cullen begins his long, dark career at St. Barnabas Medical Center. He works in the burn unit, a place where pain is a constant companion. The patients here are critically ill, their bodies ravaged by fire. Death is not uncommon. It provides the perfect camouflage. Cullen drifts from room to room like a spectre. He selects his victims not out of hatred, but out of a twisted sense of mercy, or perhaps a simple desire to exercise power. He injects the digoxin into their IV bags. He walks away. He watches the monitors from the nurses' station as the lines go flat. The first cracks in the system appear quickly. The hospital security at St. Barnabas begins to notice something wrong. They find IV bags in the trash that have been tampered with. They find needle punctures in bags of saline. They analyze the fluid and find insulin and digoxin where it should not be. They narrow the suspect list down. Charles Cullen is the prime suspect. The evidence is there. The motive is unclear, but the danger is undeniable. You would expect the police to be called. You would expect handcuffs. But this is where the true horror of the Charles Cullen story begins. It is not just about a killer. It is about a corporate cover-up. The administrators at St. Barnabas are terrified. They are afraid of a scandal. They are afraid of lawsuits that could bankrupt the hospital. They are afraid of the bad press. So, they make a decision that will doom dozens of future victims. They do not call the police. They do not report him to the nursing board. They simply call him into an office and offer him a deal. Resign, and we will give you a neutral reference. They choose to protect their brand rather than human life. They pass the trash. Charles Cullen signs the papers, packs his bag, and walks out the front door. He is free. He has a clean license. He has a letter of recommendation. He drives away from St. Barnabas, leaving behind a trail of dead bodies that no one will investigate. He is a monster who has just been given permission to hunt again, and the state of New Jersey is full of hospitals that are desperate for nurses. He moves to Warren Hospital in Phillipsburg. The pattern repeats. He is the quiet guy on the night shift. He is helpful. He picks up extra shifts. And then the patients start dying. An elderly woman comes in for a routine procedure and dies of a massive heart attack. A young man recovering from a car accident suddenly codes. The doctors are baffled, but they write it off. These things happen, they say. They do not know that the nurse standing in the corner, looking so concerned, has just poured a lethal dose of heart medication into the patient's vein. At home, Cullen is a nightmare. He abuses the family dog. He fights with his wife. He drinks. He attempts suicide again and again. He is a chaotic mess of depression and rage. But at the hospital, he is in control. He is the angel of death. He decides who lives and who dies. He kills when he is stressed. He kills when he is angry. He kills because he can. He murders 3 elderly women at Warren Hospital. He admits later that he wanted to end their suffering. But he also kills people who are not terminal, people who are recovering. The scary part is how easy it is. The medication dispensing system, a machine called the Pyxis, tracks who takes out drugs. But Cullen learns the loopholes. He knows how to cancel a request so it looks like he never took the drug. He knows how to scavenge discarded meds from the trash. He is a parasite feeding on the inefficiencies of the system. And for 16 years, he moves from hospital to hospital. 9 different institutions hire him. 9 different institutions fail to stop him. He leaves a trail of red flags that is visible from space. He is fired for poor performance. He is fired for hiding medication. He is investigated by police for stalking a co-worker. And yet, the background checks come back clean. The hospitals only give dates of employment to avoid liability. It is a conspiracy of silence, a wall of bureaucracy that protects the killer and leaves the patients defenseless. He eventually lands at Somerset Medical Center, his final killing ground. And it is there that he meets the only person capable of stopping him. But before we meet the hero, we must understand the depth of the darkness at Somerset. Cullen is no longer just euthanizing the old and the sick. He is escalating. He is killing seemingly at random. He is killing a priest. He is killing a young woman. The devil has been let loose in the corridors, and the administration is looking the other way, terrified of what they might find if they open their eyes. The year is 2003. We are at Somerset Medical Center in Somerville, New Jersey. The hospital is a modern fortress of healing, but inside, the staff is whispering. There is a darkness in the critical care unit. Patients are crashing with alarming frequency. Their blood sugar levels drop to 0, or their hearts stop violently. The administration is nervous, but they are paralyzed by the fear of a lawsuit. They delay calling the authorities for 3 months after the suspicions begin. In that time, Charles Cullen kills at least 5 more people. He is a machine operating in the blind spot of a bureaucratic nightmare. Enter the unexpected hero of this tragedy. Her name is Amy Loughran. She is a compassionate, dedicated nurse who works the night shift alongside Cullen. To Amy, Charles is not a monster. He is her best friend. He is the man who helps her with her heavy lifting because she suffers from a heart condition. He is the man who plays with her children. He is the funny, quiet guy who brings her coffee. They share secrets in the break room. She trusts him with her life. The realization that her best friend is a serial killer will nearly destroy her. The facade begins to crack when 2 detectives, Tim Braun and Danny Baldwin, finally get involved. They are tenacious, old-school cops who smell a rat. They are stonewalled by the hospital administration, who withhold records and downplay the deaths. But the detectives find a back door. They approach Amy. They show her the records from the Pyxis machine, the automated drug dispenser. They show her the list of medications Charles has been withdrawing. Digoxin, insulin, drugs that have no business being pulled at 3 in the morning for patients who do not need them. Amy looks at the list, and her world collapses. She sees the timestamps. She matches them to the deaths of her patients. The pattern is undeniable. The man who sat at her kitchen table, the man who held her hand when she was sick, has been murdering the people she swore to protect. It is a betrayal so profound it leaves her breathless. But Amy Lochran finds a reserve of courage that shames the hospital administrators. She agrees to help the police. She agrees to wear a wire. The trap is set at a local restaurant. It is a scene dripping with tension, worthy of a Hitchcock film. Amy sits across from Charles. She is terrified, her heart pounding against the hidden microphone taped to her chest. She has to act normal. She has to be his friend. She pushes a plate of food towards him and looks him in the eye. She tells him she knows. She asks him to stop. Charles Cullen, the blank-faced phantom, does not deny it. He does not scream. He simply stares at her with dead eyes and says, "I want to go down fighting." The police move in. Charles Cullen is arrested in the parking lot, but the battle is not over. In the interrogation room, he shuts down. He curls into a ball, rocking back and forth, refusing to speak. The detectives push him for hours, but he is a stone wall. They need a confession. Without it, the circumstantial evidence might not be enough to convict him of murder. They need him to say the words. They play their final card. They send Amy into the interrogation room. It is one of the most intense psychological confrontations in criminal history. Amy does not scream at him. She does not attack him. She treats him with the same compassion she showed him on the night shift. She touches his shoulder. She tells him that she still cares about him, but he has to tell the truth. She appeals to the tiny, flickering spark of humanity left inside the monster. And finally, the dam breaks. Charles Cullen lifts his head. He looks at her and says, "I can't stop. I couldn't stop." The confession that follows is a descent into madness. Charles Cullen admits to killing patients. When the detectives ask him for names, he shrugs. He cannot remember them. There were too many. He admits to silencing roughly 40 lives, but experts who analyze his employment history and the spike in death rates at the 9 hospitals where he worked believe the true number is much higher. They estimate he may have killed nearly 400 people. If that number is true, Charles Cullen is the most prolific serial killer in the recorded history of the United States. He is sentenced to 18 consecutive life sentences. He will die in prison. But the true villain of this story is not just the man with the syringe. It is the system that enabled him. For 16 years, hospitals passed him along like a bad penny. They knew he was dangerous. They suspected he was killing. But they fired him with neutral references to protect their bottom line. They prioritized profit over patients. The Cullen Law was eventually passed in New Jersey to force hospitals to report incompetence, but for hundreds of families, it was too little, too late. The terror of Charles Cullen was his invisibility. He was the danger that hid in plain sight, protected by the silence of modern bureaucracy. He was a killer of the computer age, hiding in data logs and shift changes. But now, we must travel back in time. We must strip away the sterile white walls, the beeping monitors, and the digital records. We are going back to the gaslight era, to a time of smoke, steel, and raw industrial ambition. We are returning to Chicago, but not the Chicago of the Tylenol Murders. This is 1893. The World's Fair is coming. The city is exploding with visitors from all over the globe. And in the shadow of this great celebration, a man is building a hotel. But this is not a hotel for guests to sleep in. It is a machine designed for slaughter. Charles Cullen used a hospital to kill. This man built his own factory of death. He is the original American nightmare. He is the devil in the White City. Welcome to the end of the line. We have traveled through the sterile corridors of modern hospitals, seen the betrayal of doctors and nurses, and witnessed the cold efficiency of poison. But now, we strip away the veneer of the 20th century. We are going back to the source. We are stepping off the train onto the soot-stained platform of Chicago in the late 19th century. The year is 1893. The Gilded Age is at its peak, glittering with gold on the surface, but rotting from the inside. This is a time of immense, grinding industrial progress, where the smoke from the factories blocks out the sun, and the streets are slick with the filth of a city bursting at the seams. Chicago in 1893 is a living, breathing beast. It is the slaughterhouse of the world, where cattle are herded by the millions to be butchered, their blood running into the river until the water turns a thick, opaque red. It is a city of noise, a cacophony of steam whistles, screaming train wheels, and the shouts of immigrants speaking a dozen different languages. It is a city of chaos, and in the center of this chaos, a dream is rising. The world's Columbian Exposition, the White City. It is meant to be a utopia, a demonstration of American greatness, a collection of neoclassical palaces built to dazzle the world. People are flooding into the city like a tidal wave. They come from the cornfields of Iowa, the mountains of Colorado, and the small towns of the East Coast. They are young, naive, and desperate for adventure. They are carrying their life savings in their pockets, looking for the future. They step off the trains with wide eyes, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the metropolis. They are anonymous faces in a crowd of thousands, and to a certain kind of predator, anonymity is the greatest gift of all. To a wolf, a flock of sheep this large is not just an opportunity, it is a feast. Into this swirling vortex of humanity steps a man who looks like the perfect gentleman. He is 27 years old, though his eyes hold the cold calculation of a much older soul. He is handsome, with a crisp moustache, a bowler hat, and a suit tailored to perfection. His voice is smooth, melodic, and persuasive. He calls himself Henry Howard Holmes, but like the city itself, the polished exterior hides a labyrinth of filth. His real name is Herman Webster Mudgett, a small-time fraudster from New Hampshire who has been running from the law for years. But in Chicago, he finds his true calling. Holmes does not settle in the heart of the city. He moves to the suburb of Englewood, near the intersection of 63rd and Wallace. It is a busy district, rapidly expanding to accommodate the coming World's Fair. Holmes finds a job at a drugstore owned by an elderly woman named Mrs. Holton. She is a widow, struggling to manage the business while dealing with her own illness. Holmes is charming. He is helpful. He takes over the books. He manages the inventory. And he treats Mrs. Holton with the deference of a loving son. The neighbors watch and nod approvingly. Such a nice young man. Then Mrs. Holton vanishes. It happens quickly, quietly. One day she is there, the next she is gone. Holmes tells the customers and the neighbors that she has gone to California to visit relatives. He says she liked the climate so much she decided to stay. He produces a document, a deed, showing that she sold the pharmacy to him before she left. It is a forgery, of course, a clumsy one, but good enough for the time. Mrs. Holton is never seen again. She is the first brick in the foundation of his empire, the first body buried beneath the legend of H. Holmes. With the pharmacy under his control, Holmes begins to expand. He looks at the vacant lot across the street. He sees potential. He sees the coming flood of tourists for the World's Fair, all of them needing a place to sleep. He decides to build a hotel, but this will be no ordinary hotel. He sketches the plans himself on scraps of paper. He does not hire a single architect. He hires construction crews, lets them work for a few weeks, and then fires them without pay, accusing them of incompetence. He brings in a new crew, lets them build a different section, and fires them too. This is not just about saving money. It is about secrecy. By rotating the workforce, by never letting one man see the entire blueprint, Holmes ensures that he is the only person on Earth who understands the true layout of the building. The structure rises, a looming, ugly block of brick and mortar. The locals call it the castle. It has turrets, battlements, and a foreboding presence that seems to swallow the light. The ground floor is retail space, a new pharmacy, a jewelry store, a restaurant. It looks legitimate. It looks like commerce. But the upper floors are a nightmare made manifest. As the walls go up, Holmes incorporates features that would baffle any sane builder. There are staircases that lead to nowhere, ending abruptly at the ceiling. There are doors that open onto solid brick walls. There are hallways that turn at sharp, confusing angles, designed to disorient anyone who walks them. It is a physical manifestation of his twisted mind. He is building a maze, and like the Minotaur of myth, he intends to be the monster waiting in the center. He installs gas jets in the guest rooms, but the controls are not in the rooms. They're in his office, hidden behind a panel. He can turn on the gas at will, filling the lungs of his sleeping guests with silent, sweet-smelling death. He installs a massive vault, airtight and soundproof, ostensibly for storing documents. But the inside of the vault door has scuff marks, desperate scratches from fingernails. He installs chutes, greased metal slides that run from the upper floors directly down to the basement. The basement is his laboratory. The basement of the castle is where the pretense of civilization ends completely. It is equipped with a dissection table, a rack of surgical tools, and vats of acid large enough to hold a human body. There is a kiln, a furnace capable of reaching temperatures that can turn bone to ash. This is the industrialization of murder. Holmes is not killing in a fit of rage. He is building a factory. He is treating death as a business process. He plans to welcome the tourists, charm them, kill them, strip their skeletons, and sell the bones to medical schools. As the World's Fair approaches, the castle opens for business. The sign swings in the wind. World's Fair Hotel. It promises comfort. It promises luxury. And for the young women arriving in Chicago, tired, lonely, and dazzled by the handsome doctor at the front desk, it looks like a sanctuary. They walk through the front door, their heels clicking on the wooden floor, unaware that they are stepping into a machine designed to erase their existence. The spider has spun his web, and the flies are beginning to land. The World's Fair opens on May 1st, 1893. It is a spectacle unlike anything humanity has ever seen. The white city glows with the brilliance of thousands of electric light bulbs, a technology so new it seems like magic. President Grover Cleveland presses a golden button, and the fountains erupt, the machinery whirs to life, and the crowd roars. But a few miles away, in the shadow of the castle, H. Holmes is conducting his own dark ceremony. His hotel is open. The rooms are ready. The gas pipes are primed. The spider is waiting for the vibrations on the web. The victims of H. Holmes fit a tragic profile. They are often young, educated, and adventurous women. They are the new women of the late 19th century, seeking independence and employment in the big city. They come to Chicago looking for work as stenographers, clerks, or secretaries. They find Holmes. He offers them jobs. He offers them lodging. He offers them romance. He is the answer to their prayers, a dashing, wealthy man who treats them like queens. They give him their trust, and then they give him their life savings. One of the first to fall into the abyss is Julia Connor. She is a tall, striking woman, the wife of a man who worked for Holmes. Holmes seduces her, turning her against her husband. She leaves her marriage, taking her young daughter, Pearl, with her. She moves into the castle, believing she is starting a new life with her lover. But Julia becomes a liability. She becomes pregnant. In the Victorian era, this is a scandal. Holmes promises to marry her, but he says they must deal with the pregnancy first. He offers to perform a simple procedure. He takes Julia down to the basement. He tells her it is a sterile environment, a place for medical work. He has her lie down on the table. He administers chloroform, telling her it is to help her sleep. It is the last breath she ever takes. He kills her with an overdose of the anesthesia. But the horror does not end with Julia. There is still Pearl. The little girl is waiting upstairs for her mother. Holmes goes to her. He tells her that her mother has gone away for a trip. He kills the child with the same cold efficiency he used on the mother. The disappearance of Julia and Pearl Connor is noticed by no one in authority. Holmes explains it away with his usual smooth lies. They move to Iowa. They move to New York. The city is so transient, people are coming and going so fast, that no one questions it. Emboldened, Holmes moves on to his next conquest. Her name is Emmeline Cigrand. She is a beautiful blonde stenographer from Indiana. She is arguably the love of his life, if a man like Holmes is capable of love. He lavishes her with gifts. He proposes marriage, but the cycle of boredom and bloodlust is inevitable. Emmeline begins to ask too many questions about the other women who used to work there. She begins to see the cracks in his mask. On a quiet afternoon, Holmes asks Emmeline to go into the large walk-in vault in his office. He tells her he needs her to retrieve a document. Or perhaps he playfully locks her in, pretending it is a game. The heavy iron door swings shut. The tumblers click. Emmeline laughs, thinking he will open it in a second. He does not open it. The vault is airtight. It is soundproof. Holmes sits in his office, just a few feet away from the door. He lights a cigar. He reads the newspaper. Inside, the air begins to run out. Emmeline realizes this is not a joke. She begins to pound on the metal. She screams, but the walls swallow the sound. Holmes listens to the muffled thuds of her fists. He enjoys the panic. He enjoys the absolute control. It takes hours for the oxygen to deplete. It is a slow, terrifying descent into darkness. When the pounding stops, Holmes waits. He waits to be sure. Then he opens the door. He collects the body. He sends it down the secret chute to the basement. The industrialization of death continues. He strips the flesh from the bones using lime and acid. He employs a man named Charles Cullen, an articulator, to reassemble the skeleton. He sells Emmeline's skeleton to a medical school in Chicago. He turns his lover into a commodity. He makes a profit on her murder. Next come the Williams sisters. Minnie Williams is a naive heiress from Texas who owns valuable property worth thousands of dollars. Holmes charms her, brings her to Chicago, and convinces her to transfer the deeds to him. Then he invites her sister, Nanny, to visit. Nanny is suspicious of Holmes. She sees the coldness in his eyes. Holmes knows she is a threat. He takes them to the fair. He treats them to a magical day, and then he brings them back to the castle. They are never seen again. The castle is a machine that consumes people. The guests check in, but they do not check out. The neighbors notice strange things. They see heavy wooden crates being moved out of the building. They see Holmes buying large quantities of quicklime. They smell strange, acrid odors drifting from the basement chimneys. But in the chaos of 1893, with the city distracted by the wonders of the White City, the devil continues his work. He is running a slaughterhouse in the middle of a residential neighborhood, but every empire must fall. The economy crashes in late 1893. The panic of 93 destroys banks and businesses. The World's Fair closes. The flow of tourists dries up. Holmes is left with a massive, expensive hotel and no income. He burns the upper floor of the castle to claim the insurance money, but the investigators are suspicious. They do not pay. Holmes is desperate. He needs money. He needs to run. He leaves Chicago, leaving the charred remains of the castle behind. He embarks on a cross-country crime spree. He teams up with a violent criminal named Benjamin Pitezel. They hatch a plan to fake Pitezel's death and collect the life insurance. It is a plan that will eventually lead to Holmes's undoing. He is no longer the master of the castle. He is a fugitive on the run, dragging Pitezel's wife and 3 children along with him on a macabre road trip. The noose is tightening, the law is catching up, and the secrets of the basement are about to be unearthed. We follow him now as he flees. The master of the castle becomes the monster of the Midwest. The end game is approaching. The police are investigating the insurance fraud, unaware that they are chasing a serial killer. They think they are hunting a con man. They are about to discover that they are hunting the devil himself. The basement in Englewood is sitting quietly, waiting for the police to break down the door and find the horrors hidden in the ash. The story shifts now to the cobblestone streets of Philadelphia. The year is 1894. It is the city of brotherly love, but there is no love in the heart of H. Holmes. He has arrived with his accomplice, Benjamin Pitezel. Pitezel is a carpenter, a father of 5, and a man whose moral compass has been slowly eroded by his association with Holmes. He believes they are partners. He believes the plan is to fake his death, collect $10,000 in life insurance, and split the money. He trusts Holmes to find a cadaver to play the role of his corpse. But Holmes has no intention of finding a cadaver. Why pay for a dead body when you can make one for free? On a quiet September morning, inside a rented house on Callowhill Street, Holmes turns on his friend. He does not use a gun. He uses chloroform. He catches Pitezel unaware, rendering him unconscious. Then he pours benzene over the sleeping man's face and chest. He strikes a match. The fire is not meant to destroy the body completely. It is meant to disfigure it just enough to suggest an industrial accident, an explosion. Benjamin Pitezel dies in agony, betrayed by the man he worshipped. The cruelty that follows is breathtaking. To collect the insurance money, the body must be identified. Holmes cannot do it himself. He is too suspicious. So he summons Pitezel's 15-year-old daughter, Alice. Alice is a sweet, innocent girl who believes her father is in hiding. Holmes takes her to the morgue. He forces her to look at the blackened, charred remains of her father. He points out the teeth, the hair. He manipulates her grief until she breaks down and confirms the identity. It is a psychological assault on a child, a maneuver so cold it freezes the blood. The insurance company pays out. Holmes has the money, but now he has a problem. He has a widow, Carrie Petezel, and 5 children who know too much or who are asking too many questions. He needs to keep them quiet. He needs to keep them moving so they never have time to realize that Papa is not coming back. He splits the family up. He tells Carrie that Ben is alive and hiding in another city. He takes 3 of the children, Alice, Nellie, and little Howard, and tells the mother he will care for them. He puts Carrie and the other 2 children on a separate train. Thus begins one of the most harrowing road trips in American history. It is a journey through the Midwest and into Canada. Holmes moves the 3 children from hotel to hotel, from city to city. Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Detroit, Toronto. He is always one step ahead of the mother, keeping her on a parallel path, but never letting her see her children. The children are confused, homesick, and terrified. They write letters to their mother, begging to see her. Holmes takes the letters, promises to mail them, and keeps them in his pocket. He enjoys their suffering. He feeds on their hope. While Holmes is playing this cat-and-mouse game across state lines, the silence back in Chicago is broken. The insurance company, suspicious of the Petezel claim, has hired the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. They are on the trail, but back in Englewood, the police finally decide to enter the castle. The caretaker has mentioned suspicious things. The neighbors are talking. The police break down the doors of the World's Fair Hotel. What they find inside turns the stomach of even the most hardened veterans. They find the gas jets hidden in the walls. They find the soundproof vaults with the scratch marks on the doors. They descend into the basement. It is a chamber of horrors. They find the vat of acid. They find the cremation furnace, still coated with ash. In the stove, they find a piece of jewelry belonging to one of the missing women. They find small bones, a rib, a hip socket. They are not animal bones. The Chicago press descends like vultures. The headlines scream, "The Castle of Horrors" and "The Monster of 63rd Street." The police begin to excavate the basement floor. The deeper they dig, the more they find. It is a graveyard beneath a hotel. They find quicklime, a chemical used to speed up decomposition. They find a dissecting table stained with fluids that have seeped into the wood. The layout of the upper floors is published in the papers, the trapdoors, the greased chutes, the secret passages. The public is mesmerized and terrified. They realize that while they were celebrating the progress of the century at the fair, a demon was operating a slaughterhouse next door. Meanwhile, the net is closing around Holmes. The Pinkertons track him to Boston. He is arrested on a warrant for horse theft, a minor charge, just to hold him. He is calm. He is arrogant. He thinks he can talk his way out of it. He denies killing Petezel. He denies hurting the children. He spins a tale about a cadaver he bought from a doctor in New York. But there is a new player in the game, a relentless Philadelphia detective named Frank Geyer. Frank Geyer is a man possessed. His own wife and daughter have recently died in a fire. He is a man with nothing left to lose, driven by a profound empathy for the missing Petezel children. He is given the task of retracing Holmes's steps. He has a photo of the 3 children, Alice, Nellie, and Howard. He packs a bag and starts a journey that will take him through the same cities Holmes visited. He goes from hotel to hotel, showing the photograph to clerks and maids, asking, "Have you seen this man? Have you seen these children?" It is a needle in a haystack. But Geyer is methodical. He tracks them to Indianapolis. He finds a rental house that Holmes had occupied. He speaks to a neighbor who remembers the man and the little boy, Howard. The neighbor remembers Holmes buying a large wood-burning stove. He remembers Holmes borrowing a shovel. Geyer feels a chill. He goes to the house. He goes to the basement. He sees the disturbed earth in the chimney flue. He begins to dig. What Frank Geyer finds in that chimney in Indianapolis breaks his heart. He finds the charred remains of a small boy. He finds the teeth. He finds the buttons from a little coat. It is Howard Pitezel. Holmes didn't just hide the boy. He slaughtered him and burned him in the stove, while the sisters waited in the next room. The discovery makes headlines across the nation. Geyer does not stop to grieve. He knows Alice and Nellie were still alive when they left Indianapolis. He knows they went to Toronto. He travels north to Canada. The hunt is now a race to find the bodies, to build a case so airtight that Holmes will hang. Geyer walks the streets of Toronto, checking real estate records for houses rented by an American man. He finds a lead, a cottage on St. Vincent Street. A man matching Holmes's description had rented it for a few days. He had asked a neighbor to borrow a shovel to plant potatoes, but he never planted potatoes. Geyer goes to the cottage. He borrows a spade. He walks to the cellar. The soil in the center of the room is soft. Geyer digs. At 3 feet down, his shovel hits something soft. He uncovers the arm of a little girl, then another. Alice and Nellie are found buried side by side. Holmes had forced them into a large trunk and pumped in gas through a rubber hose. He had watched them die, then buried them in the dirt. Geyer has found them all. The family is destroyed. The detective stands in the dark cellar, the smell of death in the air, and he weeps. He has the evidence. The monster is finished. The trial of H. Holmes is a media circus. He fires his lawyers. He defends himself. He treats the courtroom like a stage, smiling at the jury, cracking jokes. He is the ultimate narcissist, believing he can outsmart the hangman. But the evidence is overwhelming. The bones in the castle, the bodies in the cellars, the testimony of the surviving Pitezel family. The jury takes very little time. Guilty, sentenced to hang. In his final days, Holmes writes a confession. It is a mix of lies and half-truths. He claims he is possessed by the devil. He says, "I was born with the devil in me. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer, no more than the poet can help the inspiration to sing." He claims his face is changing, morphing into the face of a demon. On May 7th, 1896, he is led to the gallows at Moyamensing prison. He is calm. He asks for his coffin to be filled with cement, terrified that grave robbers will do to him what he did to so many others. The trapdoor opens. The neck snaps. The devil in the White City swings in the silence. H. Holmes is dead, but his legacy is the birth of the 20th century monster, the predator who kills not for passion, but for pleasure and profit. He turned murder into an industry, and as the rope stops swaying, we are left with the chilling realization that the modern world, with all its crowds and anonymity, is the perfect hiding place for evil. We leave the gaslit streets of Philadelphia and the hanging body of H. Holmes. We leave behind the 19th century, a time when murder was industrial and raw. We leap forward nearly 100 years into the bright, fluorescent reality of modern America. We return to Texas, a landscape we visited with Dr. Death, but this time the horror is not in the operating room. It is in the nursery. We are going to a place that should be the safest room in the world, the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit. The year is 1981. The location is Kerrville, Texas, a small, dusty town in the hill country. It is a place of rodeos, pickup trucks, and fierce community pride. At the center of this community is Sid Peterson Memorial Hospital. It is a small facility, where the doctors know the parents and the nurses knit blankets for the newborns. Into this quiet world walks a woman named Janine Jones. She is a licensed vocational nurse. She is loud, opinionated, and aggressively competent. She wears her uniform like armor. Janine Jones is not a wallflower like Charles Cullen. She demands to be the center of attention. She wants to be the hero. She wants to be the one holding the baby when the code blue is called. She wants the doctors to marvel at her speed, her knowledge, her ability to snatch a child back from the brink of death. But there is a terrifying paradox at work here. To be the savior, there must be a victim. To be the hero, there must be a crisis. And if a crisis does not happen naturally, Janine Jones is more than willing to create one. The hospital staff begins to notice a disturbing trend. When Janine is on shift, the babies crash. Healthy infants, in for minor respiratory issues or routine observation, suddenly stop breathing. Their hearts seize. They turn blue. The alarms scream, shattering the silence of the ward. And always, Janine is there. She is the first one at the bedside, shouting orders, starting CPR, injecting the emergency drugs. She glows in the chaos. She feeds on the adrenaline. One of the victims is a baby named Chelsea McClellan. She is 14 months old. She is brought to a clinic in Kerrville, where Janine has moved to work after leaving the hospital under a cloud of suspicion. Chelsea has a mild cold. Her mother, Petty, brings her in for a checkup. The doctor is busy, so Janine takes them into a treatment room. She tells the mother she needs to give the baby a routine injection. She sends Petty out of the room. Minutes later, Petty hears a gasp. She rushes back in to find her daughter limp, her body fighting for air. Janine is calm. She scoops the baby up and rushes her to the emergency room next door. Chelsea survives that day, but Petty McClellan trusts the nurse. She thinks Janine saved her baby from a sudden seizure. A month later, she brings Chelsea back. Janine administers another shot. This time, the drug is succinylcholine, a powerful muscle relaxant used to paralyze patients for intubation. It stops the breathing muscles instantly. Chelsea stops breathing. Her heart stops. This time, she does not wake up. Petty McClellan watches her daughter die, holding the hand of the woman who killed her. It is a level of betrayal that defies comprehension. Janine Jones stands over the grieving mother, playing the role of the tragic angel, absorbing the sorrow like a vampire. She attends the funeral. She cries louder than the family. She buries the evidence of her crime in the weeping of the mourners. Back at the hospital in Kerrville, the statistics are becoming impossible to ignore. The death rate in the pediatric unit has skyrocketed. Children are dying of unexplained seizures, massive bleeding, and heart failure. The other nurses whisper. They call Janine's shift the death shift. They joke darkly that if you want your child to live, you get them out before 3 p.m. But they are afraid to speak up. Janine is powerful. She is vindictive. And the administration, like in so many of these cases, is terrified of a scandal. But a few brave souls begin to dig. They look at the logs. They see that the supply of heparin, a powerful blood thinner, is disappearing. They see that vials of succinylcholine are missing. They realize that Janine is not just unlucky. She is injecting babies with paralytics and blood thinners to induce a medical emergency, just so she can rush in and save them. It is a condition known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy, but on a professional scale. She is playing God with the most fragile lives imaginable. The investigation is fraught with difficulty. In 1982, there are no cameras in the rooms. The drugs she uses leave the body quickly. It is her word against the silence of the dead. But the sheer volume of attacks, estimates range from 40 to 60 children, leaves a statistical footprint that cannot be erased. A grand jury is convened. The body of Chelsea McClellan is exhumed. The toxicology technology has advanced just enough. They find the traces of the muscle relaxant in her tissue. Janine Jones is put on trial. The media dubs her the Angel of Death, a moniker that will stick to medical killers forever. The courtroom is packed with the parents of dead children. They watch as the woman who held their dying babies sits stone-faced, showing no remorse. She is convicted of murder and injury to a child. She is sentenced to 99 years. The town of Kerrville breathes a sigh of relief. The monster is caged, but the story has a twist that stings like salt in a wound. Due to an obscure Texas law from the 1970s meant to relieve prison overcrowding, Janine Jones is scheduled for mandatory release. She is set to walk free in 2018, after serving only a fraction of her sentence. The panic is palpable. The killer of babies is coming back. Petty McClellan, now a grandmother, vows to stop it. She rallies the victims' families. They demand justice. The district attorney, a man named Nico LaHood, realizes he has one shot. He digs back into the cold cases. He finds evidence in the death of another baby, Joshua Sawyer, who died in 1981. He charges Janine Jones with a new murder, just months before her scheduled release. The legal maneuvering is brilliant and desperate. Jones, now an old woman with grey hair, is brought back to court. She pleads guilty to avoid another trial. She is sentenced to life in prison. She will die behind bars. Janine Jones forces us to confront the darkest aspect of human nature, the desire for attention that outweighs the value of life. She did not kill for money like Holmes. She did not kill for mercy like Cullen claimed. She killed for the rush. She killed to feel important. And she did it to children who could not speak, could not fight back, and who looked at her with trusting eyes as she pushed the plunger. But as we leave the heart-wrenching tragedy of the Texas nursery, we must prepare for a different kind of horror. We're going to move from the chaotic, attention-seeking killer to the cold, calculating efficiency of a man who killed not for glory, but for convenience. A man who looked at a ward full of patients and saw them not as people, but as a workload to be reduced. We traveled to the Midwest, to Indiana, to meet a man who turned a hospital into a quiet, deadly assembly line. We arrive in the heartland of America. The cornfields of Indiana stretch out to the horizon, a sea of green and gold under a vast open sky. This is Clinton, Indiana, a town so small that the rhythm of life is dictated by the seasons and the church bells. The year is 1993. In a place like this, the local hospital, Vermilion County Hospital, is more than a medical facility. It is a cornerstone of the community. It is where you are born, where you fix your broken arm, and where eventually your grandparents go to pass away. But in the mid-90s, the passing away part starts happening with terrifying speed. The central figure in this unfolding tragedy is a man who is impossible to miss. Orville Lynn Majors is a licensed practical nurse, but he does not look like the gentle healers we see on television. He is a massive presence, a man of significant physical bulk who dominates the narrow hallways of the small 4-bed intensive care unit. He is not known for his bedside manner. He is known for his efficiency, his gruff demeanor, and a chilling nickname that the staff whispers when he is not around. They call him the Angel of Death. But there is nothing angelic about Orville. Majors is a man who seems to view his patients not as people, but as obstacles. He is openly disdainful of the elderly. He calls them whiners and waste. He complains about the families who ask too many questions. He rolls his eyes when a call light goes on. To Orville, the sick are a burden. They are messy, they are needy, and they interrupt his routine. And Orville Lynn Majors is a man who likes his routine. He works the weekends, the shifts where supervision is light, and the hospital is quiet. In 1994, the death rate at Vermilion County Hospital undergoes a statistical anomaly that defies explanation. Suddenly, the ICU becomes a departure lounge. Patients who are admitted for stable conditions, a hip fracture, a mild pneumonia, an irregular heartbeat, are dying within hours of Orville coming on shift. It becomes a grim joke among the other nurses. They notice the pattern. They see that when Orville is on duty, the death rate jumps by hundreds of percentage points. It is not a subtle curve. It is a vertical spike. The fear in the hospital becomes palpable. Nurses start double-checking their patients before they leave, terrified of what they will find when they return. They notice that just before a patient dies, Orville is often the last person in the room. He goes in to give a medication or to check a monitor. Minutes later, the flatline tone screams through the unit. But unlike the chaos of Janine Jones, who wanted to be the hero, Majors does not always rush to save them. Sometimes he just watches. He stands there, his large frame blocking the light, watching the life fade out with a look of cold indifference. The families of the victims are confused. They are told their loved ones died of natural causes, of heart failure, or old age. But in a small town, people talk. They compare notes at the grocery store and the gas station. "My dad was fine yesterday," one says. "My mom was sitting up eating breakfast," says another. The stories are all the same. They were getting better, and then suddenly they were gone. The whisper network grows louder until it reaches the ears of the state police. The investigation that follows is one of the largest and most expensive in Indiana's history. The police descend on the small hospital. They seize records. They interview hundreds of staff members, and they bring in the epidemiologists, the detectives of the medical world who use math to catch killers. The numbers are damning. The experts calculate that a patient is 43 times more likely to die when Orville Lynn Majors is working than when he is not. The probability of this happening by chance is 1 in billions. It is a statistical impossibility. But statistics alone do not convict a man of murder. The police need physical evidence, and to get it, they have to do the unthinkable. They have to disturb the rest of the dead. In a move that traumatizes the entire community, the authorities order the exhumation of 15 bodies. It is a scene of Gothic horror. The backhoes digging in the quiet country cemeteries, the coffins raised from the earth, the families standing by the fence, weeping as their loved ones are brought back into the light of day for one last medical exam. The forensic pathologists work with meticulous care. They are looking for something that should not be there. They are looking for potassium chloride. It is a common electrolyte, essential for life, but in high doses, it is a lethal weapon. It stops the heart instantly, like a switch being flipped. Because it is a natural substance in the body, it is incredibly difficult to detect after death. But they also look for epinephrine and other heart-stopping drugs. They find needle puncture marks that were not documented in the charts. They find patterns of toxicity that align perfectly with Major's shifts. The motive that emerges is chilling in its banality. Orville Lynn Majors did not kill for sexual gratification. He did not kill for money. He killed because he was annoyed. He killed to lighten his workload. If a patient was demanding, if a family was difficult, if the unit was too busy, he simply removed the problem. He treated human beings like clutter to be cleared away. It is a level of narcissism and laziness that is almost impossible for a sane mind to comprehend. He turned murder into a time management strategy. The trial is a spectacle. The prosecution paints a picture of a monster who played God in a rural ICU. They present the charts, the graphs, the testimony of nurses who saw him with syringes he shouldn't have had. They tell the story of Dorothea Hickson, an elderly woman who was recovering well until Majors entered her room. Minutes later, she was dead. A witness saw Majors hiding a vial in his pocket as he left. The jury listens, horrified by the scale of the betrayal. Orville Lynn Majors is convicted of 6 counts of murder, though the authorities suspect the true number is closer to 130. He is sentenced to 360 years in prison. He maintains his innocence to the end, claiming it was a conspiracy against him. But the silence that falls over Vermilion County Hospital after his arrest tells a different story. The death rate drops instantly back to normal. The epidemic is cured the moment the killer is removed. Orville Lynn Majors dies in prison in 2017. His heart fails him, just as he made the hearts of so many others fail. He leaves behind a legacy of paranoia. He showed us that in the quietest corners of America, in the places where we feel most safe, a dark resentment can fester. He was the ultimate bully, using his power over the weak to make his own life slightly easier. But while Majors was a man who hated his work, our next subject is a man who loved it too much. He loved the mechanics of death. He was a drifter, a hitchhiker, a man who worked as a nurse's aide, not because he cared, but because it gave him access. He didn't just use poison. He used everything. Arsenic, cyanide, rat poison, hepatitis virus, even a plastic bag. He killed in Ohio. He killed in Kentucky. He killed lovers, neighbors, and patients. He called himself an angel of death, but he was really just a grim reaper with a name tag. We travel east now, crossing the state line into Ohio. We're going to meet a man who claimed to have killed 87 people, a man who looked like the boy next door, but who had a cemetery in his mind. We're about to enter the twisted world of Donald Harvey. We cross the state line into the rolling hills and river valleys where Ohio meets Kentucky. This is the industrial rust belt of the 1970s and 80s. It is a grey, hard-working landscape of steel mills and coal barges churning down the Ohio River. In the city of Cincinnati, there is a man who looks like he wouldn't hurt a fly. He is small, slight, with a mustache and sad, droopy eyes. He looks like a tired clerk or a quiet librarian. His name is Donald Harvey. But to the detectives who eventually peer into his soul, he is known simply as the Angel of Death. Donald Harvey begins his career in the medical field, not as a doctor or a nurse, but as an orderly. He is the lowest rung on the ladder at Marymount Hospital in London, Kentucky. He changes the sheets, he empties the bedpans, he is invisible to the doctors who stride past him. But invisibility is a superpower. In 1970, at the tender age of 18, Harvey discovers a terrible secret about himself. He discovers that he likes the feeling of control. He likes the power of deciding when a life ends. His first victim is a stroke patient named Logan Evans. Evans is messy. He smears filth on the walls. He is difficult. Harvey is disgusted. One night, the rage boils over. Harvey does not use a complex drug. He uses a plastic bag and a wire. He smothers the old man. As he watches the life struggle and fade, he does not feel guilt. He feels a rush of euphoria. He feels like a god. And just like that, the seal is broken. The young orderly realizes that in a hospital, death is expected. No one looks for a murder weapon when the victim is already dying. Harvey moves to Cincinnati. He gets a job at the Veterans Administration Medical Center. This is a massive facility filled with sick, elderly men who serve their country. To Harvey, it is a playground. He is not particular about his methods. He is an experimenter. He becomes a student of pathology, but not to cure. He studies how to kill. He reads medical textbooks to learn which poisons mimic natural diseases. He turns the hospital into his personal laboratory. He uses arsenic, slipping it into juice or water. He uses rat poison. He uses petroleum distillates. He injects air into veins to cause embolisms. He even uses the hepatitis B virus, injecting it into unsuspecting patients to see what happens. He is not just killing to end suffering. He is killing to see how the body breaks down. He keeps a diary of his crimes, a meticulous record of the symptoms he induces. He watches the doctors scratch their heads, confused by the strange turns their patients take. He laughs inside. He knows the secret. But Donald Harvey is unique among medical killers because he does not limit himself to the hospital. He brings his work home. When he has a dispute with a neighbor, he poisons their drink. When a lover makes him angry, he slips something into their food. He poisons his own friends. He poisons the people he lives with. He is a walking toxic waste dump, leaking death wherever he goes. He is the ultimate passive-aggressive personality, solving every interpersonal conflict with a lethal dose of chemistry. For 17 years, he operates with impunity. He drifts between hospitals, leaving a trail of bodies that spans 2 states. He is caught once for a burglary, but no one connects him to the deaths. He is charming when he wants to be. He is helpful. The nurses love him because he is always willing to take the difficult shifts, to sit with the dying patients. They do not know that he is the one pushing them over the edge. He is the grim reaper in comfortable shoes, standing quietly in the corner of the room. The end comes in 1987 at Drake Memorial Hospital in Cincinnati. Harvey has become careless. He is arrogant. He kills a patient named John Powell. Powell is recovering from a motorcycle accident. He is not terminal. Harvey poisons him with cyanide. Cyanide is fast and it is brutal, but it has one flaw. It leaves a scent, a distinct odor of bitter almonds. During the autopsy of John Powell, the pathologist, Dr. Lee Lehman, smells that telltale scent. It is faint, but it is there. He orders a specific test for cyanide. The results are positive. The police are called. They look at the staff who had access to Powell. They find Donald Harvey. They search his home. They find a pantry that looks like a witch's apothecary. Jars of arsenic, cyanide, books on the occult, books on poison. The evidence is overwhelming. Harvey is brought in for interrogation. At first he is quiet, but then the dam breaks. He wants to brag. He wants credit for his work. He begins to talk and talk and talk. The detectives are stunned. They expect a confession for 1 or 2 murders. Harvey confesses to killing 37 people. Then the number goes up. He claims he killed nearly 90 people. He says he lost count. He admits to killing patients, neighbors, friends. He admits to killing simply because he had a bad day. To avoid the electric chair, Donald Harvey agrees to a plea deal. He pleads guilty to 37 murders, but the true count is likely much higher. He is sentenced to multiple life terms. He is locked away in the Toledo Correctional Institution. In prison, he is a celebrity among the twisted. He calls himself an angel of mercy, claiming he only killed the sick. But the records show otherwise. He killed the inconvenient. He killed the annoying. He killed for sport. Donald Harvey's story ends violently, fittingly. In 2017, he is beaten to death in his cell by another inmate. The man who used poison and stealth to kill dozens is bludgeoned to death in the open. His death closes the book on one of the most prolific and chaotic serial killers in American history. He showed us that the boy next week might be mixing arsenic into the sugar bowl. We have explored the hospitals, the nurseries, and the pharmacies. We have seen the doctor, the nurse, and the orderly turn into monsters. But now we must face the ultimate horror. The man who combines the medical knowledge of a doctor with the terrifying hands-on brutality of a butcher. We are leaving the Rust Belt. We are going back to the beginning, to the turn of the century, to a house in Massachusetts. This is not a hospital. This is a home. And the person running it is a smiling grandmotherly figure who runs a sanitarium. This is the case of Jane Toppen. Jolly Jane, the woman who confessed that her ambition was to kill more people, helpless people, than any other man or woman who ever lived. She wanted to hold them close as they died, to look into their eyes and see the soul leave. She is the final stop on our journey into the poisoned heart of American medicine. We travel back to the gaslight era of New England. The year is 1885. We are in Cambridge, Massachusetts, just across the river from Boston. It is a world of stiff collars, heavy wool coats, and strict social hierarchies. In this Victorian society, women are expected to be nurturing, gentle, and subservient. They are the angels of the house. But in the corridors of Cambridge Hospital, there is a nurse who is subverting every expectation. She is robust, loud, and constantly smiling. Her colleagues call her Jolly Jane. They think she is the life of the party. They have no idea that her smile is a mask for a soul that has been broken beyond repair. Born Honora Kelly, she is the daughter of a madman. Her father was a tailor who reportedly sewed his own eyelids shut in a fit of insanity. She was abandoned to an orphanage, stripped of her name, and eventually indentured to the Toppen family. They changed her name to Jane, but they never adopted her. She grew up as a servant in the house where she lived, a second-class citizen fueled by a deep, simmering resentment. She learned early on that if she wanted power, she would have to take it. And she found that the easiest way to take power was to become a nurse. In the late 19th century, nursing is a grueling profession, but it offers access. Access to the vulnerable. Access to the pharmacy. Jane Toppen excels at the work. She is strong, capable of lifting patients that other nurses cannot. She is popular with the doctors because she is willing to do the dirty work without complaint. But she has a secret hobby. While the other nurses are resting, Jane is experimenting. She is fascinated by the chemical mechanics of the human body. She wants to know exactly how much morphine it takes to slow a heart down and how much atropine it takes to speed it back up. She treats her patients like laboratory rats. She administers a dose of morphine, watching the patient drift into unconsciousness, their breathing shallow. Then, just as they are slipping away, she hits them with atropine. The drug jolts the nervous system, dragging them back from the edge. She plays a game of yo-yo with their lives, pushing them towards death and pulling them back over and over again. She watches their pupils dilate and contract. She monitors their pulse. To her, this is not cruelty. It is science. It is art. She is the conductor of an orchestra of pain. But there is a darker, more perverse element to Jane's crimes. She's not just a cold scientist like Michael Swango. She is driven by a twisted desire for intimacy. When a patient is in the final throes of death, when the drugs have finally won, Jane does something that chills the blood. She climbs into the bed with them. She wraps her sturdy arms around their frail bodies. She holds them close, pressing her body against theirs. She wants to feel the exact moment the life leaves them. She wants to absorb their fading energy. It is a terrifying necrophilic ritual that she repeats again and again. She is eventually fired from Cambridge Hospital and later from Massachusetts General Hospital. Not for murder, no one suspects that yet, but for recklessness. She administers opiates too freely. She is too casual with the rules. But in the 1890s, there is no central database of bad nurses. Jane simply pivots. She becomes a private nurse. She enters the homes of the wealthy families in Cambridge and Cape Cod. She becomes the trusted caretaker who lives in the guest room, cooks the meals, and watches over the sick. Her killing spree truly accelerates in 1901. She sets her sights on the Davis family. Alden Davis is an old friend, a man whose wife, Mattie, was once Jane's landlord. When Mattie falls ill, Jane rushes to her side. Jolly Jane is there to help. Within days, Mattie is dead. Jane is the picture of grief. She comforts the widower, Alden. She moves into the house to take care of him and his daughters. It is a fox moving into the hen house. One by one, the Davis family is extinguished. Alden Davis, the patriarch, dies suddenly. Then his sister Genevieve falls ill. Jane tends to her, feeding her mineral water that is laced with poison. Genevieve dies. Then one of the daughters, Minnie, begins to decline. The neighbors are starting to talk. It seems like a curse has fallen on the Davis house. Every time Jane Topham walks through the door, a coffin is carried out. But Jane is so nice, so cheerful, so devoted. Who would suspect her? She eliminates the entire family in a matter of weeks. She kills for convenience. She kills because they annoy her. She kills because she wants their job. But mostly, she kills because she cannot stop. The rush of holding a dying soul is the only thing that makes her feel alive. She travels to Calumet to visit her foster sister, Elizabeth Brigham. They have a lovely reunion. They go for a picnic on the beach. Jane poisons the corned beef. She watches her sister die in agony, holding her hand, smiling that terrifying, jolly smile. But Jane makes a mistake. She gets sloppy. She poisons a patient named Sarah Connors, and then she starts making advances towards the victim's husband. She is trying to secure a future for herself, trying to marry into stability. But the family is suspicious. They order a toxicology exam. The results show morphine and atropine. The police are called. The house of cards begins to crumble. The detectives start digging into her past, and they find a trail of bodies that stretches back decades. Jane Topham is arrested in 1901. She does not deny her crimes. In fact, she is proud of them. She confesses to her lawyer with a shocking lack of remorse. She admits to killing 31 people, though she hints the number is much higher. She tells the authorities her goal: I want to be known as the greatest criminal of the century. I want to have killed more people, helpless people, than any man or woman who has ever lived. She is declared insane. She is not sent to the gallows like H. Holmes. She is sent to the Taunton State Hospital, an asylum for the criminally insane. She spends the rest of her life there, a portly, smiling old woman who terrified the nurses. She would call them over and whisper, "Get some morphine, dearie, and we'll have a lot of fun." She died in 1938 at the age of 84, dying peacefully in her sleep, a mercy she never granted to her dozens of victims. Jane Toppan represents the ultimate betrayal of the maternal archetype. She was the nurse, the sister, the caretaker. She used the mask of feminine gentleness to hide a predator's heart. Her case forces us to look at the people we trust with our lives and ask, do we really know them? Or are we just seeing the mask they want us to see? We have now traversed the landscape of medical murder from the 19th century to the 21st. We have seen the different faces of evil, the incompetent surgeon, the greedy husband, the attention-seeking nurse, the lazy orderly, and the thrill-seeking sadist. But as we move into the final third of our journey, we must confront the hardest truth of all. These killers did not operate in a vacuum. They operated within a system that failed. We are going to shift our focus now. We are going to look at a case that is not just about a single killer, but about a corporate cover-up that cost thousands of lives. We are going to look at the pharmaceutical industry itself. We are going back to the source of the poison. We are going to examine a tragedy that reshaped the laws of America. We are going to the era of the flapper, the jazz age, and a bottle of cough syrup that killed children by the score. We step out of the shadows of individual madness and into the blinding light of a national tragedy. The year is 1937. America is still shaking off the dust of the Great Depression. It is a time of simple faith in progress. Science is the new religion. We have conquered the air with airplanes. We are conquering distance with the radio. And in the world of medicine, we believe we are finally conquering infection. The miracle drug of the moment is sulfanilamide. It is a white powder that can stop deadly bacteria in its tracks. It is saving lives by the thousands, curing pneumonia and scarlet fever. But there is a problem. Sulfanilamide is bitter. It is a chalky, unpleasant pill that sticks in the throat. Children refuse to take it. Doctors in the South are clamoring for a solution. They want a liquid version. They want a syrup that tastes sweet, something a mother can spoon-feed to a sick child without a fight. In Bristol, Tennessee, a respectable pharmaceutical company called the S.E. Massengill Company decides to meet this demand. They turn to their chief chemist, a man named Harold Watkins. Harold Watkins is not a monster. He is not a psychopath like Swango or a sadist like Toppan. He is a company man. He is given a task: dissolve the powder, make it liquid, make it palatable. Watkins goes to his lab. He tries water. It doesn't work. He tries alcohol. It doesn't dissolve well. Then he tries diethylene glycol. It is a solvent, commonly used in industrial settings. It holds the powder perfectly. It has a sweet, raspberry-like taste. It looks like a brilliant solution. Watkins adds some red dye. He adds a raspberry flavoring. He calls it elixir sulfanilamide. The company is thrilled. They do not check if diethylene glycol is safe for human consumption. They do not run animal tests. In 1937, the law does not require it. Safety is an afterthought. The market is the priority. Watkins drinks a sip. It tastes fine. He gives the green light. In September, the company ships 633 shipments of the elixir across the country. The tragedy begins in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Doctors are puzzled. Patients who are being treated for sore throats are suddenly dying of kidney failure. It is a gruesome, agonizing death. The kidneys stop working completely. The body stops producing urine. The toxins that are normally flushed out build up in the blood. The victims swell up. They suffer from intense abdominal pain, nausea, and convulsions. They beg for water, but they cannot keep it down. They slip into a coma and die, their bodies poisoned from within. The American Medical Association gets a sample. They analyze it. They realize with horror that the solvent is essentially antifreeze. The S.E. Massengill Company has just shipped gallons of pure poison to pharmacies and doctors' offices across the nation. The FDA is alerted, but they are a small, toothless agency in 1937. They have no legal authority to ban a drug just because it is dangerous. They can only seize it if it is misbranded. Technically, an elixir must contain alcohol. The Massengill product contains none. It is a solution, not an elixir. This technicality, a simple word on a label, is the only legal weapon the government has. They charge the company with misbranding. But that is just paperwork. The real mission is a race against time. The FDA mobilizes every single inspector they have. They call themselves the Men of Death. Their mission, retrieve every single drop of the pink liquid before another child swallows it. It is a manhunt, but the fugitive is a bottle. The agents drive through the back roads of the South, pounding on pharmacy doors in the middle of the night. They check sales ledgers. They track down individual customers. They find bottles in medicine cabinets, half empty. They find bottles in the trash. They find bottles in the hands of grieving mothers who are about to give a second dose to a surviving child. The stories the agents uncover are heartbreaking. One doctor in New Orleans writes a letter to the FDA that would make a stone weep. He says, "I used the elixir for the first time on my own best friend's child. I watched him die in agony. I have not been able to sleep. I feel like a murderer." The agents are relentless. They recover 234 gallons out of the 240 gallons distributed. But the 6 gallons they miss are enough to do the damage. 105 people die. Many of them are children. The public is outraged. The owner of the company, Dr. Samuel Massengill, issues a statement that displays a chilling lack of empathy. He says, "We have been supplying a legitimate professional demand and not once could have foreseen the unlooked-for results. I do not feel that there was any responsibility on our part." He blames the victims. He blames the doctors. He refuses to accept that his negligence killed 100 people. But Harold Watkins, the chemist, cannot bear the weight. He learns that the chemical he chose, the chemical he thought was a brilliant solution, is a killer. He reads the names of the dead children. The guilt eats him alive. While awaiting trial, Harold Watkins takes his own life. He becomes the 106th victim of the elixir sulfanilamide. This disaster changes everything. The public outcry forces Congress to act. In 1938, they passed the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. For the first time, companies are required to prove that a drug is safe before they can sell it. This tragedy is the reason why today, every pill you take has gone through years of testing. The regulations that people complain about, the red tape, the slow approvals, are written in the blood of the children of 1937. We have seen how a corporation can kill through negligence. But now, we are going to look at a case where the killing wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was a cold, calculated extermination within a family. We are moving from the macro to the micro. From a national tragedy to a domestic nightmare, we are going to Utah. The year is 1985. The Mormons call it Zion. But in Salt Lake City, a storm is brewing. The bombings are about to start. This is not a terrorist from a foreign land. This is a brilliant, twisted mind who uses forgery, documents, and pipe bombs to rewrite history and eliminate anyone who stands in his way. We are entering the world of Mark Hofmann. The morning of October 15th, 1985, breaks over Salt Lake City with a deceptively clear sky. The mountains surrounding the valley are dusted with the first snows of autumn, standing like silent sentinels over the headquarters of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is a city of order, of wide avenues and clean sidewalks, a place where the crime rate is low and the sense of community is high. But that sense of safety is about to be shattered by a violence so sudden and so calculated that it will leave the city of saints trembling in fear. At the Judge Building in downtown Salt Lake, a young financial consultant named Steve Christensen arrives for work. He is a bishop in the church, a family man, and a collector of historical documents. He sees a brown cardboard package sitting in the hallway outside his office. It looks innocent, perhaps a delivery of books or papers. He bends down to pick it up. The motion triggers a mercury switch inside the box. The explosion is instantaneous and devastating. The pipe bomb is packed with nails, designed not just to kill, but to shred. Steve Christensen dies instantly. Panic rips through the downtown corridor. Sirens wail, echoing off the canyon walls. The police scramble to secure the scene, suspecting a disgruntled investor or perhaps a religious zealot. But 3 hours later, across town in the quiet suburb of Holiday, the terror doubles. Gary Sheets, a business associate of Christensen, is the target. But Gary is not home. His wife, Kathy Sheets, walks out to her driveway. She sees a package. She picks it up. The blast kills her immediately. Now, the police are not dealing with a random murder. They are dealing with a serial bomber. The city goes into lockdown. The church leadership is whisked away to secure locations. The National Guard is put on alert. Rumors fly that this is an attack on the foundations of the Mormon faith. And in a way, it is. But the attacker is not an outsider screaming at the gates. He is a wolf in sheep's clothing, a man who has been dining with the apostles and trading secrets in the back rooms of the church archives. His name is Mark Hofmann. Mark Hofmann is a prodigy of deception. To the world, he is a devout Mormon and a brilliant finder of lost documents. He has discovered letters from the founding fathers of the church, documents that challenge the official history, papers that the church is desperate to acquire and suppress. The most famous of these is the Salamander Letter, a document that suggests the prophet Joseph Smith was led to the gold plates not by an angel, but by a white salamander. It shakes the faith to its core. But Mark Hofmann is not finding history. He is manufacturing it. He is a master forger, a chemist of lies. He hunts down paper from the 19th century and old Bibles. He mixes ink using recipes from the 1800s. He uses chemicals to artificially age the writing, creating cracks in the ink that fool the most skeptical experts. He is selling the church its own nightmares, and they are paying him a fortune to keep them quiet. But Hofmann is living a double life. He is drowning in debt. He has promised documents he hasn't forged yet. The walls are closing in. Steve Christensen was not just a victim. He was the man who was beginning to suspect the truth. He was auditing the deals. He was the loose end that needed to be cut. Kathy Sheets was a diversion, a cruel sacrifice to make the bombings look like a business dispute involving her husband's company. Hofmann is trying to buy time with blood. He thinks that if he creates enough chaos, the scrutiny on his documents will fade. The next day, The 16th of October, the third bomb goes off. But this one detonates inside Mark Hoffman's own sports car. He is severely injured, his body torn by shrapnel, but he survives. At first, the police think he is the third victim. The community rallies around him, but the forensic evidence at the scene tells a different story. They find the components of the bombs in his car. They find the receipts. They find the green galvanized pipe. The victim is the villain. The investigation that follows is a triumph of forensic science. A team of document examiners looks closer at the salamander letter and hundreds of other documents Hoffman sold. They develop a new technique using a cyclotron to analyze the ink at a molecular level. They discover that the ink is not dry. It is still chemically active. The cracks in the ink were created artificially by rapid heating. The history of the church, which Hoffman had been rewriting for years, was a fiction created in his basement. Mark Hoffman is not a religious fanatic. He is a sociopath who hates the church and loves the game. He admits to the murders to avoid the death penalty. He is sentenced to life in prison. He leaves behind a legacy of absolute cynicism. He proved that people will believe a lie if it confirms their worst fears or their greatest hopes. He didn't just kill two innocent people. He tried to assassinate the truth. But while Hoffman used gunpowder and nails to cover his tracks, our next subject returned to the silent, invisible world of biological agents. We are moving from the Salt Lake Valley to the halls of power in Washington, D.C., and the newsrooms of New York City. We are jumping to the autumn of 2001. The country is still bleeding from the wounds of September 11th. The towers have fallen. The Pentagon is scarred. The nation is looking at the sky, terrified of airplanes. But the next attack does not come from the sky. It comes in the mail. It arrives in standard white envelopes, addressed in block letters. Inside is not a letter, but a fine greyish-white powder. It is a weapon of mass destruction that can fit in a pocket. It is the return of the medical nightmare, but this time it is weaponized. We are entering the era of Amerithrax. The dust from the collapsing towers of the World Trade Center has barely settled. The date is September 18th, 2001. The American psyche is raw, exposed, and trembling. We are watching the skies for airplanes. We are watching the bridges and the tunnels. We expect the next blow to be loud, fiery, and external. But the next blow arrives in the silence of the morning mail delivery. It comes in a standard, pre-stamped envelope, indistinguishable from a bill or a birthday card. The first target is not the government, but the media. Letters are mailed to NBC News anchor Tom Brokaw and the New York Post. A photo editor at the Sun tabloid in Florida, a man named Robert Stevens, opens a letter addressed to the office. He thinks nothing of the fine white powder that puffs into the air. He wipes it off his desk. He inhales. He goes back to work. Days later, he begins to feel confused. He vomits. He lapses into a coma. On October 5th, Robert Stevens becomes the first person in the United States to die of inhalation anthrax in 25 years. Panic, cold and absolute, grips the nation. This is not a bomb. You cannot see it coming. You cannot run from it. It is in the very air you breathe. The letters contain a message, written in block letters, trying to mimic the rhetoric of foreign terrorists. Death to America. Death to Israel. Allah is great. It looks like the work of Al-Qaeda, but the scientists at the FBI laboratory look at the spores under the microscope, and they see something that chills them to the bone. This is not crude bathtub anthrax made in a cave. This is the Ames strain. It is pure. It is highly refined. The particles are engineered to be the perfect size to float in the air and lodge deep in the human lung. It is coated with a sophisticated additive to prevent clumping. This is weapons-grade material, and the Ames strain is a domestic product. It comes from inside the house. It comes from the United States Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases at Fort Detrick, Maryland. The investigation, codenamed Amerithrax, becomes the largest and most complex in the history of the FBI. While the agents hunt for the source, the letters keep killing. They are sent to Senator Tom Daschle and Senator Patrick Leahy. The sheer potency of the powder is terrifying. The letter to Senator Daschle is opened by an aide. The spores are so fine that they float through the ventilation system of the Hart Senate office building. The entire building has to be sealed. But the most tragic victims are the ones who were never targeted. They are the collateral damage of the postal system. Joseph Kersine Jr. and Thomas Morris Jr. work at the Brentwood Mail Processing Facility in Washington, D.C. They never open the letters. They just handle the machines that sort them. The pressure of the sorting machines forces the microscopic spores through the pores of the envelopes. The air in the facility becomes a death trap. Both men sicken and die. A 94-year-old woman in Connecticut, Ottilie Lundgren, dies simply because her mail crossed paths with a contaminated letter. For years, the FBI chases the wrong man. They focus on a scientist named Stephen Hatfill, destroying his reputation in the process, only to eventually clear him. The pressure to solve the case is immense. Finally, the evidence begins to point back to Fort Detrick. It points to a brilliant, eccentric microbiologist named Bruce Ivins. He is one of the world's leading experts on anthrax vaccines. He has access to the specific flask RMR 1029, that matches the genetic fingerprint of the attack spores. The profile that emerges of Bruce Ivins is a tragedy of mental illness and professional frustration. He is a man who has dedicated his life to developing an anthrax vaccine. But the program is in danger of losing funding. No one cares about anthrax anymore. The theory is twisted but logical. To save his life's work, to prove that the vaccine is necessary, he needs to remind the world how dangerous anthrax is. He creates the disease to sell the cure. It is the ultimate manifestation of the God complex we have seen in so many medical killers. The FBI closes in. They survey him 24 hours a day. They raid his home. They find evidence of his late-night hours in the lab right before the mailings. They find a history of obsession and instability. But there will be no trial. There will be no confession in a courtroom. As the net tightens, Bruce Ivins swallows a massive overdose of Tylenol, the very weapon used in our first case, and codeine. He dies in July 2008. The Amerithrax case is officially closed, but it leaves a scar. It proved that the tools of mass destruction can be held in a single envelope. It proved that the most dangerous enemy might be the one with the highest security clearance. 5 people died, 17 were sickened, and a nation learned to fear the mailbox. But while the anthrax attacks were a high-tech assault on the public, our next case returns us to the domestic sphere. It takes us back to the kitchen table, to a bottle of painkillers, and to a woman who saw the Tylenol murders not as a tragedy, but as a blueprint. We are going to the Pacific Northwest. The year is 1986. We are about to meet Stella Nickel, a woman who wanted a new life, and decided that the easiest way to get it was to poison her husband and disguise it as a national panic. This is the case of the Excedrin murders. It is the story of a copycat who thought she was smarter than the FBI. It is a story of greed, cyanide, and a fish tank algaecide that became the key to unlocking a perfect crime. We trade the high-stakes political paranoia of Washington, D.C. for the damp, evergreen quiet of the Pacific Northwest. The year is 1986. We are in Auburn, Washington, a blue-collar suburb south of Seattle. The rain here is constant, a grey curtain that muffles sound and keeps people indoors. Behind the drawn curtains of a mobile home, a different kind of toxicity is brewing. It isn't a weapon of mass destruction designed by a scientist. It is the simmering hatred of a bored housewife named Stella Nichol. Stella is 43 years old. She has had a hard life, a string of legal troubles, and a deep dissatisfaction with her current reality. She's married to Bruce Nichol, a heavy equipment operator who is quiet, steady, and, in Stella's eyes, unbearably dull. Bruce likes his routine. Stella likes excitement. She likes money, and she is drowning in debt. She looks at her husband, and she does not see a partner. She sees a stumbling block. And more importantly, she sees an insurance policy. Bruce has a life insurance payout worth roughly $76,000. But there is a clause, an indemnity clause. If Bruce dies an accidental death, the payout jumps to over $100,000. Stella does the math. She wants the money, but she needs it to look like an accident. She remembers the Chicago Tylenol murders from 4 years earlier. She remembers how a random poisoning was classified as an external attack, a tragic accident for the victim. She decides to write her own sequel to that horror story. On June 5th, Bruce Nichol comes home with a headache. It is a common complaint. He walks into the kitchen. Stella is there, helpful as always. She hands him a bottle of extra-strength Excedrin. Bruce takes 4 capsules. He trusts his wife. He swallows the pills and goes out to the deck to watch the birds. Minutes later, he collapses. He is rushed to the hospital, but he never wakes up. He dies that evening, but Stella's plan hits a snag, a massive, frustrating snag. The doctors at the hospital do not test for cyanide. They see a 52-year-old man who smokes and drinks. They rule his death as emphysema. Natural causes. Stella is furious. Natural causes means the basic insurance payout. It means she loses the extra money. She cannot stand up and scream, "Check for poison," without incriminating herself. She has committed the perfect crime, and it was too perfect. No one noticed. So, Stella Nichol makes a decision that places her in the pantheon of the most callous killers in history. If the world won't notice a single poisoning, she will give them a spree. She decides to create a panic. She needs a second victim, a stranger, to establish a pattern. She needs the police to believe that a maniac is loose in Seattle, poisoning Excedrin bottles at random. Then she can suddenly recall that Bruce took Excedrin too, and claim he was an earlier victim of this madman. She buys bottles of Excedrin. She takes them home. She opens the capsules, empties the painkiller, and refills them with a mixture of cyanide. But she adds something else. To crush the cyanide pellets, she uses a mortar and pestle she uses for her fish tank. She mixes in a little bit of algaecide, a chemical used to kill algae in aquariums. This tiny, microscopic detail will be her undoing. She reseals the packages with a chilling attention to detail and places them on the shelves of grocery stores in the Auburn and Kent area. Then she goes home and waits for someone to die. It takes a few days. On June 11th, 40-year-old Sue Snow, a bank manager, wakes up with a morning headache. She goes to her kitchen, takes 2 Excedrin capsules, and collapses in her bathroom. She dies hours later. This time, the doctors are suspicious. The death is sudden, violent, and unexplained. They run a toxicology screen. They find cyanide. The headlines explode. The Tylenol copycat. Cyanide in Seattle. The panic that gripped Chicago now grips the Northwest. Bottles are pulled from shelves. The FDA issues warnings. Stella Nichol watches the news, and she smiles. This is her moment. She waits a respectable amount of time, 6 days after Sue Snow's death, and then calls the police. She tells them, in a voice trembling with fake realization, that her husband Bruce died suddenly recently, and he had taken Excedrin right before he collapsed. The police exhume Bruce's body. They test the tissue. They find the cyanide. The medical examiner changes the cause of death to homicide. Stella is now the grieving widow of a victim of a serial killer. She files for the insurance money, but the FBI is involved now, and they are looking closely at the bottles found at the Nichol home and the Snow home. They find something strange. The cyanide in the capsules is not pure. It contains green specks. The lab analyzes the specks. It is algae destroyer, a specific brand of fish tank cleaner. The agents ask, who has an aquarium? Stella Nichol does. But the real break comes from inside the house. Stella's daughter Cynthia approaches the police. She is terrified of her mother. She tells the detectives that Stella had talked about killing Bruce for years. She tells them that Stella had often said how easy the Tylenol killer had it. She tells them that her mother had been researching poisons at the local library. The FBI goes to the library. In 1986, there are no digital records, but there are checkout cards and fingerprints. They find a book titled Human Poisoning. They dust the pages. They find Stella Nichol's fingerprints on the pages describing cyanide. They find her prints on the pages describing how to crush pills. It is physical proof of her premeditation. When the agents interview her, Stella is arrogant. She agrees to a polygraph test, convinced she can beat it. She fails miserably. The web of lies unravels. The FBI connects the dots. She killed a stranger, Sue Snow, purely as a marketing gimmick to sell the murder of her husband. She treated a human life like a billboard. Stella Nichol is arrested and charged with product tampering resulting in death, the first person ever charged under the new federal laws created after the Chicago Tylenol case. She is convicted and sentenced to 90 years in prison. She remains the only person ever convicted of a crime of this nature, while the original Tylenol killer remains free. Her greed was her downfall. If she had just accepted the smaller insurance check, if she hadn't been so desperate for the accidental death bonus, she might have gotten away with murder. The tragedy of the Excedrin murders is the randomness. Sue Snow died because a woman she never met wanted a new car and a debt-free life. It reinforces the terrifying truth that in the ecosystem of crime, we are all connected. A decision made in a trailer in Auburn can end a life in a bathroom miles away. But as we leave the rainy Northwest, we are going to shift gears. We are moving away from the solitary poisoners and the greed-motivated killers. We are going to look at a duo, a pair of killers who fed off each other's darkness. We are going to California. We are going to the glamorous, wealthy neighborhoods of Los Angeles. But we are not visiting movie stars. We are visiting a therapist's office. This is the story of two brothers who had everything: money, privilege, education, and threw it all away in a hail of shotgun pellets. It is a story that captivated the nation not because of a mystery, but because of the sheer brutality and the defense that followed. We are entering the saga of the Menendez brothers. But wait, does that fit our medical theme? No. We must stay on the path of the medical and the hidden. Let us adjust our course. We will go to a hospital in Missouri. We will meet a man who didn't kill for money, but for the thrill of the code blue. A man who makes Janine Jones look like an amateur. We are going to meet Robert Courtney, the pharmacist who diluted cancer drugs to buy a church spire. We land in the heart of America, Kansas City, Missouri. It is a city of fountains, jazz, and deep-rooted Midwestern values. It is a place where a handshake still means something, where people trust their neighbors, and where they trust their pharmacists. In the late 1990s, one pharmacist stands above the rest. His name is Robert Courtney. He is a pillar of the community. He is a deacon at his church, a generous donor who pledges millions to Christian charities, and a father who coaches his children's sports teams. Robert Courtney owns the Research Medical Tower Pharmacy. It is located in a high-rise building, surrounded by the offices of the city's top oncologists. Patients come to him in their darkest hours. They are fighting ovarian cancer, pancreatic cancer, lung cancer. They are terrified, clutching prescriptions for chemotherapy drugs like Taxol and Gemzar. These drugs are their last line of defense, their only hope of seeing another Christmas or holding a new grandchild. They hand these prescriptions to Robert Courtney, and he smiles. He tells them he will take care of them. But Robert Courtney has a secret. He is not the wealthy philanthropist he pretends to be. He is overextended. He has pledged more money to the church than he has. He owes hundreds of thousands in taxes. He has a lifestyle to maintain, a mansion, luxury cars, the adoration of the community. He needs cash, and he realizes that he is holding liquid gold in his hands. Chemotherapy drugs are incredibly expensive. A single dose can cost thousands of dollars. In 1998, Courtney makes a decision that places him in the deepest circle of hell. He decides to dilute the drugs. He takes the Taxol. He takes the Gemzar. He removes a portion of the medicine and replaces it with saline solution or water. He sells the watered-down mixture to the doctors and patients at full price. He pockets the difference. It is a theft, yes, but it is also a murder in slow motion. He is stealing the potency of the treatment. He is selling a placebo to people who are fighting a war for their lives. The horror of this crime is in the silence. The patients sit in the infusion chairs for hours. They watch the clear liquid drip into their veins. They wait for the side effects, the nausea, the hair loss, the fatigue, that signal the poison is killing the cancer. But for many of Courtney's patients, the side effects are mild. They think they are lucky. They think they are strong. In reality, the tumor is growing unchecked, fueled by the placebo effect and the absence of the killer drug. For 3 years, Robert Courtney plays this game. He dilutes thousands of prescriptions. He creates a tiered system of evil. If the patient is terminal, he dilutes it more. If they are young, he dilutes it less. He plays God with a syringe. He watches people wither and die, knowing that he has stolen their chance at remission, all so he can pay his tax bill and look like a big shot at the Sunday service. The scheme unravels thanks to the intuition of a single doctor. Dr. Verda Hunter is an oncologist who treats many of the patients using Courtney's pharmacy. She begins to notice a disturbing trend. Her patients are not responding to the treatment. Their white blood cell counts are not dropping as they should. The tumors are not shrinking. She suspects that the drugs are bad. She talks to a sales representative from the drug company, Eli Lilly. The sales rep is skeptical. He tells her that the drugs are manufactured to the highest standards, but Dr. Hunter is persistent. She trusts her gut. In May 2001, she orders a test. She takes a bag of Gemzar prepared by Courtney's pharmacy and sends it to a lab for analysis. The results are shocking. The bag should contain 1,900 milligrams of the drug. The lab finds less than 450 milligrams. It is mostly water. Dr. Hunter contacts the authorities. The FBI sets up a sting operation. They have a doctor write a prescription for chemotherapy for a fictitious patient. They watch as Courtney prepares the IV bag. They seize the bag as soon as it leaves the pharmacy. They test it. It contains less than 1% of the prescribed medication. They have him. Robert Courtney is arrested in August 2001. The news sends a shockwave through the cancer community in Kansas City. Thousands of patients, past and present, realize that their treatment might have been a fraud. The panic is absolute. People who thought they were in remission wonder if the cancer is still lurking. Families of the dead wonder if their loved ones could have been saved. In the interrogation room, Courtney crumbles. He is not a hardened criminal. He is a coward. He admits to diluting the drugs. He claims he only did it to pay his taxes. He tries to minimize the damage, claiming he started only recently. But the FBI digs into his records. They estimate that over a period of nearly a decade, Robert Courtney diluted 98,000 prescriptions. He affected 4,200 patients. The medical experts are called in to assess the toll. It is difficult to prove exactly which death was caused by the dilution, as cancer is a deadly disease on its own. But the consensus is that hundreds of people died prematurely. They were robbed of months, maybe years, of life. They were robbed of the chance to say goodbye. Courtney is charged with tampering with consumer products resulting in death. At his sentencing hearing, the courtroom is packed with the survivors and the bereaved. They confront him. They tell him about the pain, the fear, the betrayal. Courtney weeps, apologizing, but the judge sees through the tears. He sees a man who traded human life for money. He sentences Robert Courtney to 30 years in federal prison. It is effectively a life sentence. Robert Courtney is the banality of evil personified. He didn't hate his victims. He just didn't care about them. To him, they were just a revenue stream. He turned the pharmacy counter into a crime scene, and he shattered the trust between patient and provider forever. But as we leave the sterile, marble-floored pharmacy in Kansas City, we must prepare for the final descent. We have 2 parts left. We have seen greed. We have seen madness. We have seen negligence. Now, we are going to see the thrill. We are going to the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Northampton, Massachusetts. We are going to meet a nurse who was young, attractive, and popular. A nurse who loved the excitement of a medical emergency so much that she started creating them. She didn't use water like Courtney. She used epinephrine. She used a stimulant that makes the heart explode. She turned the intensive care unit into her personal stage, and the patients were merely props in her deadly performance. This is the story of the angel of death who wanted to impress her boyfriend.